to the US now, where many of us are eagerly watching the US midterm elections and anticipating the results. President Biden has had a shocking first couple of years in office, and the Democrats, they look to be in complete disarray. Well, joining me now is the Washington Post columnist and a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Centre, Henry Olsen. Henry, great to have you on Credlin. Now, we know the polls can and often are misleading, but they don't look good for the Democrats. What do you think is going to go down next Tuesday?
I think it's going to be a bigger victory for Republicans than the American mainstream media is suggesting. I think Republicans will take control of both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and I think the margins will be larger than the poll averages or than the mainstream media is communicating right now.
So what does it mean for President Joe Biden if Republicans win back the House and maybe the Senate, as many expect? What will that do to Biden's legislative agenda? And does he become then a bit of a lame duck president, a president in name only, in effect?
It certainly destroys his legislative agenda. I don't think that the Republicans will pass anything that reflects his legislative priorities. You'll be set for 2 years of legislative warfare because in our presidential and separated powers system, our annual budget needs to be approved by both the president and by the members of Congress. And obviously, Republicans and Democrats will have different priorities for that, and you can expect conflict over that. You can expect conflict over immigration, where Republicans will try to get control of our borders. We had 2.7 million people encountered in the last year on our borders and trying to enter illegally. They'll try and stop it, and Joe Biden will try and see whether or not he can prevent Republicans from stopping it. So you'll get an end to the Biden legislative agenda and regular legislative warfare between the two parties over the next 2 years.
And for us who watch US politics quite closely, we often see a lot of Republicans, and some would say rhinos, Republicans in name only, joining with Democrats to pursue a Democratic agenda. Is that a risk if the Republicans do seize control of the Senate, that we might still see that breakaway group?
Well, there's certainly enough Republicans who would be inclined to want to do that they could pass something through the Senate. There's undoubtedly, though, not enough Republicans that would be able to break ranks in the House, especially if the Republicans do as well as I think they're going to do, which is to say, not take a narrow majority in the chamber, but rather have a pretty comfortable one. So I suspect what you'll see is a lot of backroom negotiations between House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, which they will be, assuming Republicans do take both chambers, to try and prevent that one chamber setting up the other for defeat. I think they'll try and present a united Republican front rather than permit people to leave the reservation only to have that fail in one of the two chambers.
Okay, now you mentioned the possible new speaker, but over the weekend there was a dramatic attack on US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. It occurred at their home. Paul Pelosi was met by an intruder apparently demanding, "Where is Nancy?" The intruder allegedly broke into their ritzy San Francisco home and ended up attacking him with a hammer. Now, there are two things from this. I know there's conflicting stories out there, but it does reflect the decline of American political discourse, but also the incredible rise of crime in California, where not even the rich and famous appear to be safe anymore.
Yeah, it's completely baffling as to how somebody was able to break into what is presumably a decently protected compound. But California crime is off the charts, and particularly crime in San Francisco, which is where Mr. Pelosi lives. And I think this will draw attention not just to alleged partisan differences. It's not clear that, for example, that this attacker was politically motivated as opposed to simply being a drug addict living on the streets or living in squalor. But it will draw attention to what's been clear for the last couple of years is crime in many American cities is rising and some places out of control. And San Francisco is unfortunately one of the premier examples in the country of that happening.
Yeah, extraordinarily, the media seem to have taken partisan sides in this by suggesting the attacker was a Republican MAGA person. Another group of people are reporting that he was a hippie and a drug user. We don't know what the truth is. The police haven't released any of the footage, and none of the security cameras, apparently, the footage from that has been released around the Pelosi home either. Is this going to now play into the political division narrative, or are there genuine concerns about, getting to the truth here?
Well, I think the police will try and get to the truth. I think, though, that what we're going to have over the next 48 hours or so is a continued attempt to use this in a political manner to drive an agenda. But the fact is that we've been seeing a partisan agenda being driven for the last couple of years. It hasn't made Joe Biden popular. It isn't helping Democrats win over independent voters, that they overwhelmingly say that they're concerned about the economy, not the partisan-driven Democratic-based priorities that the media has, in many cases, been driving home. And I don't think that this is going to break through and change people's minds, particularly the independent voter. It'll be the sort of thing that gets the Democratic base angry for one reason, the Republican base angry for another reason, and the independent voter will just keep doing what they're going to do, which is they're going to vote their pocketbook and they're going to vote the safety of their household.
Yeah, some things are common all around the world. Let's just jump down to Brazil quickly, where President Bolsonaro has lost his bid for re-election, and the former Brazilian president, a leftist Lula, has actually narrowly won. It's a country divided. The polls were clearly against Bolsonaro all along, but in the end it was a very, very close fight. What are your reflections on this change of government, and what does it mean for Brazil?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, once again, the polls underestimated the political strength of a populist conservative leader. It happened in 2019 when the Morrison government shocked Australia. It happened with Donald Trump and Republicans in 2020. It happened in Sweden earlier this year. And I think that's just a demonstration that there are some people who simply are so disengaged, so distrustful of the media and the establishment that they no longer respond to polls, and that's something people need to take into account. I think Lula's power is going to be restrained by a Congress that was elected last month that is largely dominated by center-right and conservative parties. The fact is, Lula won a negative victory, which is to say people didn't endorse his agenda. They endorsed the departure of Bolsonaro, and he will have a very hard time getting things through Congress that are anything other than consensus measures.
It's a fascinating time in global politics. Henry Olsen, thank you for joining us on Credlin tonight.